Did you see the sign? On my door?
No.
Read it.
I can't read.
Yes, you can. Oh my word. Anywho. Well, now I've lost my train of thought. Hello, my name is Tucker, and today, ow, I'm lying on my floor. I'm not going to be lying on my floor the entire time. I'm going to be teaching you how to write a book outline. Hopefully, I do a good job. I'm not good at teaching people things. Before I start, I wanted to say, one, I am still sick. I've been sick for like 3 weeks, and I'm kind of in the final stage of the cold where I'm like dry coughing and my lungs hurt. But, also, Luna is kind of hyper and being very loud because there's another dog here and she wants to play with her. It's a whole thing. We're trying to introduce her to other dogs. So if you hear Luna whining, my apologies. I'm doing my best to not get that in the final video, but it might happen. Yeah. So without further ado, let's get into the video. Editing Tucker here. I also forgot to add that my family was being extremely loud for some reason today. The day I wanted to film a video that required silence. So you might hear shouts or cries or yells or other random noises that weren't me. So my apologies for that. So, oh well. Enjoy the rest of the video. The first thing I'm going to cover is the general outline of a novel. This frame, I'm going to call it a frame. Frame is a better term. This framing rarely works for nonfiction, and when I'm saying nonfiction, I'm not meaning like self-help books, because self-help books don't have a frame because they're not a story. But nonfiction that tells a story doesn't always fit to this frame, because obviously nonfiction, real life, doesn't choose to fit to a pattern. So for starters, we have the introduction. The introduction is when you introduce all your characters, introduce the world, introduce the motivations of the characters, stuff like that. And I will go into that, excuse me, in a little, as I said earlier, I'm sick, it sucks. I will go into the characters and stuff in a minute. After the introduction, you have basically what I call everything else, which is very vague, but I will explain. So this is the rising action. The rising action is made up of everything leading up to the climax. So you have all your tension, basically all of the story. So for instance, I'm just going to use Frozen as my example for this entire video because it fits very well to this frame. So the falling action for Frozen would be starting from when Anna gets hit with the ice blast when she's a child, and by the way, Frozen spoilers. So starting from when Anna gets hit, all the way to the climax, which is when Anna freezes. And that is the the rising action. That is the story. Most of your story will be in the rising action. Then after the rising action, after everything has happened, you have the climax, or the aha moment is the conclusion. Is it? I don't know. It's been a while since creative writing class. The climax is when everything is at its highest or its peak or its worst. So when it seems like nothing can get better, everything is ruined. After the climax, you have the rising, or the falling action. My brain is just not working today. The falling action is when everything starts to get better. So when the characters decide, no, we're not going to give up, and they win their battles, they fix everything, and then everything starts to get better. That is the falling action. After the falling action, you have the conclusion, also called the resolution, or the denouement. I don't know how to spell it. Denouement. This is when everything is resolved. All the storylines are tied up, and everything is like, here's the happily ever after. Or if you want to have a cliffhanger, that's what it would look like. This would be a cliffhanger, in which case you move on to your next book. And this is the general frame of a novel. Introduction, rising action, climax, falling action, conclusion. And now on to the actual outline. Before I start, I want to be fully transparent. This outline idea I didn't come up with. And I don't know who originally came up with it, but I saw this first on a video from Kat on the channel Katytastic. It was an extremely helpful video, and I will leave it linked down below. I'm not sure if she made up the outline or if she copied it from someone else. But to be fully transparent, that's where I'm getting this idea. I'm just adding a few of my own notes. Once again, that video is from Kat from Katytastic. It is an extremely amazing video, very well done, and I highly recommend everyone check it out. And now I'm just going to try to put my own spin and add my own thoughts to it, so here we go. Editing Tiger again. It was at this point that I decided to take a break from filming, and I left my phone in my room, and I left my door open, and my sister found my phone and decided to film a video. I think it's pretty funny, and she's fine with me leaving it in the video, so enjoy this chaos.
Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So today we're going to talk about the bees and the birds. So when you take a bee and you take a bird, it makes a bead. And then they combine, and then they make little bear beads. Oh, I just realized it looks like something. Let's just add 2 of them then. That's what she said, that's what she said, that's what she said. And then you make another one, and then you have 3 more. That's what she said, that's what she said, that's what she said. And then if you add an R, it's breed. So then you breed everything. And then you make more. That's what she said. That's what she said. And then juices. Doop, doop. And then more eggs. And more juices. And more beads and birds and bees. And you make more beads until you have no room left on the board. So, yep. That's how you make a bee, a bird, and a bee. Birds and bees, kids, know your stuff. Know your facts. Know your stuff. Anyways, thank you and goodbye.
Now back to your regularly scheduled program. The fun thing about a novel, about a story in general, is it always has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Or, what's the word I'm looking for? Stasis, or how the character is, an event, and then a reaction. So, basically, stasis is your character and how they are living, whether they're happy or not. An event would be something like the inciting incident. This pushes them to make changes, to take action, and that event causes a reaction to the event, to fix it or make it go away or change it. And that reaction brings them back to a stasis or to a state of being. And this happens over and over again throughout the story. So this stasis event reaction could be a chapter. It could also be an act or an entire book. So, let me explain acts. Act. That's A-C-T-S. I'm not good at enunciating words. So, acts. In a novel or in a story, there are 3 acts. There's Act 1, there's Act 2, and there's Act 3. also known as the beginning, the middle, and the end. Each act has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And each beginning, middle, and end has its own beginning, middle, and end. Which is super cool. As you can see, there's the big beginning, middle, and end, the smaller beginning, middle, and end, and the even smaller beginning, middle, and end. And even each beginning, middle, and end can have their own beginning, middle, and end. And I will explain that. So, as I said, your book has 3 acts. Act 1. I'm not good with space management. Act 2. And Act 3. So, oops, my brain is really just not working today. When is it ever, though? Act 1, beginning. Act 2, middle. Act 3, end. So, each act has a beginning, a middle, and an end, as I already said. So this is the beginning, middle, and end. So, stasis, event, reaction, stasis, event, reaction, stasis, event, reaction, or beginning, middle, end. So, now that you have those 9 blocks, each block has its own beginning, middle, and end. So, beginning, middle, and end. And each of these would be considered a chapter. And each chapter has a beginning, a middle, and an end. So as you can see, each act can be broken down into 3 parts, which can be broken down into 3 more parts, which can be broken down into 3 more parts. And I will get into the specific names of these parts next, so here we go. Okay, so you will probably see my head for the rest of the video because I'm sitting rather than laying down, because I can't lay down because it's bad for my back. Also, I'm coughing. Also, my family is loud, so this is just a super professional video. Anywho, this is a novel. We have the first act, the beginning, the second act, the middle, and the third act, the ending. And each act has a beginning, a middle, an end, beginning, middle, end, beginning, middle, end, and each beginning, middle, and end has a beginning, a middle, and an end. It's a beginning, middle, endception. Okay, so, Chapter 1. Chapter 1 is the introduction. This is where you will introduce your characters, you will introduce their motives, and if this is a heavy fantasy, you will introduce some of the world. Unless it's like realistic fiction, if there's any magical supernatural elements, you'll introduce them, but don't introduce everything all at once, because that is info dumping, and that is annoying to read, unfortunately, even though it's tempting to do it, because you want to be like, here's everything, here's how the world works, but don't do that. Okay, Chapter 2, we're going right into the Inciting Incident. The Inciting Incident is the event... Sorry, I can't write and talk at the same time. There we go. The Inciting Incident is the event that causes change, that pushes the character into a reaction. This is the part of the story that starts the story. It's the push into everything else. So, for instance, in Hunger Games, the Inciting Incident was when Katniss's sister Prim was chosen for the Hunger Games, and she volunteered in Prim's place. I can hear Luna barking. I wonder what she's barking at. Anywho, that was the Inciting Incident in the Hunger Games, when Prim was chosen for the Hunger Games and Katniss went in her place. That Inciting Incident started the story. It pushed Katniss into her story being at the Hunger Games. And when I say start the story, I don't mean the literal start of the book, because I know some people might think, well, I already started the story at the introduction, but the introduction is like almost a I'm really just on camera for some reason. My brain is just not good with words. This is the introduction, and then this is the push into the actual story. Chapter 3 is the fallout. This is the consequences, or what happens because of the inciting incident. So this is going to be everything that happens after, how your character reacts, how others react, how the world reacts to this inciting incident. Chapter 4 is the reaction / retaliation. How do I spell that? My brain. Okay, retaliation. This is when your character reacts against the falling blah, 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 blah. This is when your character goes against what happened in the inciting incident and what happened during the fallout. This is when your character says, no, I don't want this to be true and I refuse to let it be true. Or, as that would be the retaliation, but mostly you're looking for the reaction. So once again, you're looking for the character's reaction to the fallout and to the inciting incident. Next, we have Chapter 5, the protagonist takes action. This is when your protagonist takes action, obviously. This is when your protagonist takes these feelings and does something with them. This doesn't necessarily have to be something dramatic, but it has to be any sort of action. The protagonist does something, and that something pushes us into Chapter 6, which is consequence. This is pretty obvious. It's the consequence from this action. And this, as you can see, kind of relates back to the thing I talked about earlier. So stasis, or how the character is feeling. Action, consequence. And as you can see, stasis, event, consequence. Stasis, event, consequence. So as you can see, it's kind of a cycle of a beginning, a middle, and an end. It's almost like a domino effect. Inciting incident causes fallout, which causes a reaction, which causes an action, which causes a consequence. And as you can see, it's just a cycle that goes over and over and over and over, and it just creates a story, which is really fun. It's kind of interesting to me how there's almost a science to stories. Next, we have Chapter 7, which is the pressure. This is the first time, I mean, obviously not the first time, but this is the first big amount of making things hard for your character, making challenges and hurdles to get over. Next, we have Chapter 8, which is the first plot twist. So, after the plot twist, we have the push into Act 2. So this is going to be that final reaction and event from the plot twist that will push us into Chapter 10, New World. So this is when we start to explore this new world. We get to play around with the new surroundings, possibly new characters, and all the things that are happening. And during this new world experience, we go to fun and games. Now, this can mean multiple things, but to me, it means romance. Now, if your book isn't a book that fits with romance, it can be anything from exploring the way the magic works or exploring new friendships, stuff like that. Basically, you're almost taking a bit of a break from the pressure to kind of lighten things up right before you have old juxtaposition. Old juxtaposition is basically reminding your character of the old world, of how things used to be and why they can't accept how things are now. Then you have 13, which is more pressure. You're adding more trials, more jumping, or more stumbling blocks, more problems for your character. And then you have the midpoint. This is when things really start to change. This is even more pressure, even more action. And that will make your character start to realize that there's no going back. And then they will fully realize this in the turning point. At this point, the door to the old world, to how things used to be, has closed, and there is no going back, and your character realizes this. And because of this realization, there is a reaction and a consequence. So they react. There's dog hair on that. Oh boy. So, reaction and consequence. They react to this turning point, and there's a consequence. And this consequence leads to more pressure. There is so much pressure in a good story. Pressure/trials. But the character overcomes these pressures and trials and comes out dedicated and determined to survive. Determined. As I said, I can't speak and write. They are dedicated and determined to keep going, which leads to the calm before the storm. Now, this can be calm at times. It can be almost like the fun and games, where things kind of take a break from pressure, but it shouldn't be actually calm. You don't want things to calm down for your characters ever. You want them to be kept on their toes. So the calm, excuse me, after the calm before the storm, there is the final plot twist. This plot twist is the plot twist that ruins everything. This makes your character realize that things are over and hopeless, and this final plot twist leads to the darkest moment. This is also known as All Hope is Lost. This plot twist has ruined everything, and your character has no energy and no motivation to do anything because hope is gone. We then go into the Power Within chapter, also known as I just said, hope is not lost. There is still hope, and the character has chosen to find it. This chapter leads to the action/rally. This is your character getting their energy up and psyching themselves up and just getting ready to actually start doing stuff, which leads to the convergence. This is when all plot lines fall together and the character is on their way to finishing the story. And this convergence leads to the final battle. This is when your character is fighting against the antagonist, whether that's a person or a concept or anything. This final battle leads to the climax, which is when things are not necessarily at their worst, but when pressure and tension is at its highest. This is the moment when every reader is holding their breath. And then after the climax, we have the falling action and the resolution. These two chapters can be the same chapter, but I put them as two chapters because the falling action is kind of the letting the breath out after the climax, the exhale, and the resolution is kind of almost like the epilogue, like the 10 years later, 1 year later type stuff. So after the climax, the character wins or maybe doesn't win. In some cases, this is where you'll end. You'll have a cliffhanger and you'll go on to your next story. But if you don't have a cliffhanger, you go to your falling action. Things are finally better. The character has survived, everything is all good, and the evil is vanquished. And now the character starts to pick up the pieces of their life again and kind of take a deep breath. Then we get to the resolution. Things are okay, everything is good, and the story is over. And now that the story is over, I will go into types of endings. So, as you probably know, there are obviously multiple types of endings. I'm going to cover the 3 main types of endings. Number 1 is the happily ever after. This is exactly what it sounds like. A clear and concrete ending. The characters are happy, everything is good, the evils vanquish forever. And these are usually standalone books. Or in the case, most romances will have a happily ever after, but still have books in the series, and those are companion novels. I could go into a whole video about how companions work and how sequels work. I should do that sometime. Anyway, the next ending we have is, in my opinion, the best one to do, and probably the most used in fantasy books, stuff like that. Oops, not happily ever. It's not happily ever. It is happily for now. This is the ending that is like, yes, the characters are happy, but. So I'm trying to think of a good example of a book that does this. I mean, if you know, I don't know. I can't think of any examples, even though I'm literally staring at my bookshelf right now looking for one. Nope, my brain is choosing not to cooperate. But anyway, this happily for now ending is basically having an ending with a resolution, but at the same time, you leave things kind of open. Like, you leave, oh, but what happened to that one character? Where did they go? Or what if this magic comes back? Something that leaves a thread to be picked up in a sequel. And finally, we have a cliffhanger. This is the obvious and annoying, in my opinion. I hate cliffhangers. This ending is obviously meant to start a sequel. So whereas Happily Ever After is there is not going to be a sequel, Happily for Now is there could be a sequel, and Cliffhanger is there will be a sequel. Happily Ever After is the story's over. Happily for Now is the story might be over, and Cliffhanger is the story is not over. So as you can see, they each have different levels of letting the story continue. Yeah, I hope that makes sense. I'm doing my best to explain endings. Let me know if you have any questions. And now I'm going to move on to an example of an outline. Okay, so I wanted to do an example of this outline with a story that's already been written because I find that examples always help me understand a concept better. So, let's go with Frozen. Spoiler for Frozen. Now, I'm not talking about Frozen 2, just Frozen, the first movie. If you haven't seen the first Frozen, this is all spoilers, so don't look. So, the introduction of Frozen, Chapter 1. This would be Anna and Elsa's childhood. So the scenes where Anna and Elsa are playing and everything's all good. And then, Chapter 2, The Inciting Incident. This is when Anna gets hit with a blast of Elsa's ice and almost dies. And then the reaction, or no, sorry, not the reaction, the fallout from Chapter 2 is Elsa and Anna's parents separate them to protect Anna. Next, we have 4. The reaction and the retaliation, or more specifically, the reaction. The reaction to Anna and Elsa being separated is more long-term because Frozen does a 21... No, not 21. What is it? Is it 19 years? No, I don't know. They do a so-and-so years later, so it's more long-term reaction. But the reaction to the fallout is Elsa is anxious and afraid of her powers, and Anna is naive and emotionally immature, in my opinion. Chapter 5, we have the protagonist, Anna, takes action, and that action is her going to the coronation and finding Hans. The next chapter, chapter 6, is consequence from said action. Anna tries to get married to Hans, and Elsa is mad, and because she is mad, she freezes the entire kingdom. Chapter 7 is pressure. Elsa sings Let It Go, but also the kingdom is frozen, so Anna leaves to find Elsa. Chapter 8, Tier 1 plot twist. Everything is frozen, and Anna's horse leaves her alone, and now she's alone in the woods, and Elsa has made her ice castle. So that's fun. And that's another thing. Plot twists don't always have to be bad. Like, a plot twist would be that Elsa's embraced her powers and now a nice queen. Like, that's a plot twist. It's just not necessarily a bad one. Next, we have Chapter 9, Push into Act 2. Anna finds the Wandering Oaken's trading thing and meets Kristoff. Chapter 10, New World. Kristoff and Anna go up to the North Mountain to find Elsa. Chapter 11, Fun and Games. Kristoff and Anna find Olaf and hijinks ensue. Chapter 12, Old Juxtaposition. On their way up, Anna and Kristoff and Olaf glance Arendelle and remember that it's frozen and that, oh boy, they need to get to Elsa quick before the world dies. Chapter 13, Tier 2 Pressure. Anna's horse, which ran off, comes home without her, and Hans sends men to go find Anna, and the Duke of Weaseltown, I don't know what the actual pronunciation is, has his men on a mission to kill Elsa. Chapter 14, Midpoint and Tier 2 plot twist. Anna finds Elsa, and Elsa freezes Anna's heart. Chapter 15, Turning Point. Anna is thrown out, and Anna is freezing, and that's not good. Chapter 16, The Reaction and the Consequence. Kristoff and Anna have to go find the trolls to help Anna, and the trolls tell her that Anna needs to do an act of true love to thaw her frozen heart. Chapter 17, Trials and Action. The trial is Elsa is captured by Hans and his men. Chapter 18, Dedicated and Determined. Anna and Kristoff are determined to get Anna help, and so they go back to find Hans to kiss her. Sorry, out of breath. Deep breath. Whew. Chapter 19, Calm Before the Storm. Anna and Kristoff sadly say goodbye. And then Chapter 20, what is this again? My brain. Tier 3 plot twist. Everything is ruined. Hans is evil. Dun dun dun. Darkest moment. Chapter 21. Anna is freezing to death and Elsa is trapped in the jail and she is very sad. Chapter 22. Power. Anna finds Olaf and they escape and Elsa escapes. Chapter 23, Action. All of the characters, literally all of the main characters, are running around on the frozen fjord trying to find everyone else. Chapter 24, Convergence. Hans finds Elsa and tells her that Anna is dead. Kristoff finds Anna and runs to her to give her a kiss that will thaw her heart. Chapter 25, The Final Battle. Hans tries to kill Elsa and Anna is trying to get to Osthoff, whatever, my brain. Kristoff when Chapter 26, The Climax. Anna sees Elsa about to get killed and freezes in front of her to save her. Chapter 27, The Resolution and Falling Action. Anna unfreezes, Elsa realizes that love will thaw the ice, thaws the kingdom, and everything is good. And that is Frozen in a nutshell. No, seriously though, that is the outline of Frozen using the outline I just taught you guys. Now, I will leave a link in the description to the outline template. I have this outline, a blank version of this outline, written out on a Google Doc. You can make a copy and write your own outline. Don't worry, I won't see your... If you make a copy, I won't see your outline. If you try to edit the actual Google Doc, I'll see it. But, if you make a copy, you can use this. Let me know how it goes for you. Let me know in the description, or not in the description, in the comments, if you have any questions or comments. That'd be great to hear. I really hope I did well in explaining this. As I said, I'm not good at teaching things. I will never be a teacher because I'm not good at explaining things. But I did my best, so that's all that counts. Or that's all that matters. My brain is just shutting down. It's only 7 o'clock. What time is it? I don't even know anymore. Yeah. And I'm sick. That's fun. Anywho, thanks for watching this mess of a video. I hope it helped in some way. And I will see you in the next video. Bye! I'm so glad it's finally over. I've literally been filming all day. So many interruptions, so many coughs, so many barks, and so many yells. I'm so sick and tired of filming. Ugh. But it's over. Bye.